We were on the shuttle to Barstow station when the math began to take hold. It had been over an hour since I jacked the hacked data slate into the back of my skull, and I had begun to worry that my cogitator had developed a workaround, a resistance, an immunity. But the lurch of the decelerization yanked what was left of my bowels towards the floor. I felt the left side of my body crawl with bugs and soft whore fingers as my mechanical right brain choked on the irreversible computations and self-annihilating fractions I had fed it. Half of my visual and audio inputs was flooded with error messages and the smell of flowers closing like a reverse time-lapse vid feed. It took me a moment to register Vera, asking if I was all right. I patted her arm reassuringly and tried to tell her I was fine, but all that came out was a 333-digit prime number. She waited patiently for me to finish. Introductions are in order, or what follows will make less sense to you than it did me at the time, and I was wasted out of my reinforced skull for most of it. I'm JPL27, making me the 27th clone of the original High Magos biologist, Joachim Percival Wassinem. It's an august and noble gene line, with a penchant for staggering genius and the creation of brilliant, beautiful mechanisms and theoretical refinements that skirt on the edge of tech heresy. Also the tendency to go fucking crazy and get put down. I was the latest attempt by the Mechanicus to get the nectar without having to deal with the giant Catachanian man-eating flowers. They thawed me out, let me work for a while, then tried cracking my skull open and replacing the crazy emotional right half of my brain with a nice sane piece of machinery. They fucked up, of course. My hemispheres were reversed, right to left, and left to right. They scooped out the jiggling pink genius parts and shit-canned them, leaving me with the bits that got bored and horny, and always sensed that beautiful something just out of reach, just over the horizon, just the far side of this latest idea. The subliminal sense that must have driven my predecessors till they cracked. Whatever it is, I've got no shot at it now. The parts of myself smart enough to reach for it wound up in a wet and mushy pile in the surgeon's discard tray. I generally stay sufficiently fucked up so as not to care. After the operation, I vaguely figured out that I was dead if they figured out exactly how badly I was broken. So I dosed myself drilling with depressants and let the cogitator drive. I wound up building standard servo skulls for 2 years before they declared me normalized and started sending me out on repair details. Which is why I was strapped into a flying can in my stained red robes, with a case full of chems and dirty logic between my feet and my mechahondrites, twitching and twisting around each other like epileptic metal snakes screwing. Metal screwing. Vera's looking at me, concerned, and I stopped laughing. She's a real piece of work, Vera. My work from before the operation. She's a skattari, technically, but the general definition of those tends more towards the heavily combat cyborg and less towards the shining work of art. She's both, I guess. 7 feet tall, most of her skin replaced with this gleaming, flexible metal stuff that I can't for the life of me remember making, any more than I can remember the meaning of the letters VERA on her back. Most cowboys don't care about aesthetics, but I was on some kind of perfect human kick back then. Something about gold men, iron men, quicksilver men. It's fuzzy. Anyways, she doesn't belong here. She should be working guard detail for the High Magos, or honor guard for a sector governor, or standing on a pedestal somewhere while people threw flowers at her for being so damn gorgeous and perfect. Perfect. Whatever combination of psycho programming, drugs, and surgery I used to lock her into loyalty was perfect, too. She imprinted on me and won't take orders from anyone else unless I'm there to confirm them. I forgot the procedure for unlocking her fixation. I forgot what I did to make her like this. I think she called me Daddy once, but I was pretty gone and might have imagined it. She's strapped into the seat right next to me. Her green eyes are glancing around the shuttle, scanning for threats in a dozen spectra. My eyes tracing the curves of her breasts, my cogitator tries to model them mathematically, but it chokes and starts doing the flower thing again. She notices me looking and stares at me blankly. Master? What? Negative, nothing. I'm fine. 7533197. Strapped into the seat to my left is a crate with air holes. I'll get to that later. My inner ear replacements goes nuts for a moment, and I half worry that I burnt it out. But Vera calmly informs me that we've docked, which means it's the transfer of the station's artificial grav, which is throwing me off. She unbuckles herself and starts gathering up the luggage while I stagger towards the exit. My internal gyroscope helpfully informs me that I am both perfectly upright and standing on a wall. My mech andrites grab the door frame for balance, and I stare out in dismay. The walls of the docking tube are transparent, and I can see Barstow Station in all its glory. It's a supply station. It'll be utterly vital to logistics of any serious mechanicus or military undertaking in the 6 nearest star systems, none of which are in any danger or of any particular interest to anyone. As a result, it hangs in space, in orbit around a bluish gas giant, inhabited by a skeleton crew, and largely forgotten by the universe. It's an enormous irregular box, a 10-kilometer warehouse that learned to fly and may now be regretting it. It's also slowly strobing all the colors of the rainbow, but that just may be me. I make my way unsteadily down the tube, Vera trailing after me. Through the round door on the other side is a huge empty cave of a cargo hold. Empty except for the welcoming committee. A tall, shriveled old man in menstruatum robes, and a skinny, nervous girl in a baggy jumpsuit. The reason on stilts is the station manager. He launches into a wheezing triad about scheduling and how long it took me to get here. I fix him with my best crazy eyes stare, but that doesn't shut him up. So I follow up with a good 6-second screech of feedback from my throat box. There's a pause of blessed silence after that, before he informs me that he has vital business to attend and stalks off. I turn to the girl, who's staring at Vera. She's mousy and stick-thin, with brown hair tied back in 2 short tails. There's a Mechanicus symbol on her breast of the jumpsuit, meaning she's an initiate. Probably the closest thing this box warranted to a tech priest. Bit young to keep running it herself, though. She notices me glaring at her and jumps, then bows deeply and starts talking. She gives me her name, which bounces right off my brain meat without making an impression, then rapidly chatters about how honored she is to be in the presence of a full-fledged servant of the Omnissiah, and something about orbs and meteors and doors. I inform her that this particular servant of the Omnissiah is greatly wearied by his travels, and also that the intoxicant levels of his oily bloodstream have decayed far below optimum. I must be shown to my chambers, that I may enter a state of blissful communion with the machine god for a good 10 hours or so, to sanctify myself before turning my hands and mechanites to whatever repair work is required. 10 hours, sir? She squeaks. But, sir, we'll be dead in 9. My muttered obscenities come out as squeals and static. Senior Initiate McCann, Renaud, had been trying to figure out why the altitude thrusters that kept Barstow steady in its lonely little orbit weren't firing. He'd been trying to figure it out for several months. He and Junior Initiate McCann, Mousy, forgot her name again, had been on the hull examining the problem when a meteor struck the bay doors of cargo hold 3. The doors buckled and blew out, venting half of the station's air before the crew managed to manually close all of the bulkheads. Mousy had been half inside an open hatch during the impact, and had managed to hold on. Renaud had taken the long fall. The station's orbit had been slowly decaying since the altitude thruster stopped firing. But the meteor strike and subsequent jet of lost air had turned a creeping downward slide into a majestic dive. They've sent out a repair and assistant request, and I've been in the area, on a ship, towards Malif. When the request had been forwarded to me, I'd been under the impression that the ship I was on was digesting me, so I'd rather hurriedly agree to come out and take a look. By the time I arrived, there were just under 9 hours left before we broke up and burned out spectacularly in the soothing blue atmosphere of Petisalis 4. Or, my cogitator helped inform me, 6 hours before the point where the station's thrusters could no longer correct our orbit even if we did get them operational. By the time I had gotten straight enough to process this information and run around in a panic surveying the damage, the shuttle had left, and its parent ship had warp jumped. I took something to calm me down, so that I could deal with the problem rationally, then something to counteract that when I realized I was contemplating my demise with the undue level of peace and acceptance. As a result, everything had become very clear and loud, and I feel like I was covered in thin, flexible layer of ice. It occurs to me that I am possibly the third most likely person on this station to actually fix any mechanical problems, after Mousy and Apex. Vera brings me Apex's crate, and I let him out, whooping angrily at his long confinement. Apex is another product of my long-lost, perfect human obsession. The theory I espoused to my enraptured colleagues was that a certain recombinant algorithm could reverse the mutations and genetic drift of tens of thousands of years amongst the stars, resulting in a prototype and archetype human genome. We could back and engineer the genetic code of that ancient ancestor, that great explorer who first left Holy Terra to conquer the stars, the apex of evolution. As it turned out, the ancient ancestor of mankind was short, stupid, and covered in hair, and had hands for feet. Sometime after my brain got scrambled, I pulled him out of storage and stuck a cogitator full of repair instructions in his head so that he could put his 4 hands to use and I could avoid any actual work. I don't recall when I gave him wings. Probably sometime during the Bender on Felk's world. These days I just tell people he's a hairy cherub. I chatter to him in binary, telling him to fix the thrusters. Apex bares his teeth at me and bangs his fists on a deck plate. Then he pulls the tool belt out of his crate, buckles it on, and flaps awkwardly away down the corridor. Normally, at this point, I just wait for Apex to do his thing, but that creepy, prickling sensation of stimulant and fear won't let me sit still. Also, Mouse Girl is staring at me in rapt attention and is making my neck itch. So I start asking questions. Spare parts manifest, power consumption. She can answer a worrying number of questions from memory, but as long as she's biting her lip and squinting in an attempt to recall something, she's not giving me that creepy fucking stare. Suddenly, the fizzing fog of drug fear and death fear goes momentarily transparent. I order her to repeat what she just said. No, sir. None of the automatic bulkheads functioned. That's why we lost so much air, sir. We had to seal them all manually. She flinches slightly as I round on her. My mech androids are lashing around above my head, and my eyes are bloodshot. Serves her right for giving me that creepy stare before. What controls those? The machine spirit of the precious sensors petitioned the holy central cortex, which, in its kindness and wisdom, closes bulkheads and opens vents to ensure stable atmosphere for surviving crew. Except, sir, it didn't. And the altimeters and thrusters? The same, sir. The altimeters report to the cortex, which fires the thrusters to keep us fixed in the heavens. But they haven't been firing, sir. I turn and begin to sprint down the corridor. The thud of Vera's combat boots and the pattern of Mouse Girl's shoes follow me until I reach the intersection and skid to a halt. Where's the central cortex? We find it deep in the heart of the station. A metal cylinder 3 meters in diameter runs from the floor to the ceiling, with a small altar before it for maintenance ceremonies. Apex is here already. He's removed part of the shielding and is reaching into the cylinder. I squat down beside him and look in. Data readouts shed dim green light on a glass globe filled with murky fluid. Apex makes a strange, sad cooing sound and taps the glass. Within, I can faintly make out a floating, wizened fetal shape with wires running into its spine. A small plaque at the base of the globe reads, Sophia Annis, service in life, service in perpetuity. I peer at the readouts. Much of the glowing data is meaningless to me, but what I can understand plants a twisted black knot in my augmented guts. I flop back on my ass and look up at Mouse, who's staring at me with a glimmer of awe and hope in her eyes. I speak. It comes out as static. I tap my throat and try again. Well, I found your problem. You need a new cortex. This one's done. Worry creases her brow. Sir, we don't have a replacement cortex. I sit cross-legged and stare at the shimmering globe. Yeah, I know. She leans over and looks into the hole, blocking my view. She peers inside for a full minute, then turns and speaks in a soft voice. Is the machine spirit dead? No, this Amisai's brass balls. This is an exaltation, a reward. The woman that used to be probably helped build this station, or did something that impressed the Mechanicus, so they wired her in alive. They gave her an eternity of blissful union with the machine, an enormous, uncorruptible metal body. They left more of her in there than they normally would, enough to feel the everlasting joy of her transcendent state. Mouse folds her skinny arms across her chest and hugs herself. So, it, she, my meat parts are crawling. I'm distinctly uncomfortably aware of my body's every seam between flesh and metal. She's not dead, she's not alive, and she's not happy. Stupid cockfuckers. Its kinda rig is not fine, but functional in a ship, or something else big and complicated and mobile. A station like this, stationary, and there's not enough input stimulus. She got bored, then she got really quite crazy. And then for the last who knows how long, she's just been waiting to die. Look at this. I lean forward, tap readouts with my mechanandrites. Neurotransmitters, tanked. Neural activity barely there. Input, output. There's the signal for the altimeter. That's all she's getting. A number getting smaller. Mousy Girl gently lays a hand on the cold metal of the column. The spirit is sad? Lonely? Or so bored she decided to stop breathing. She looks at me wide-eyed. She's chewing on her lower lip. Can you ease her pain, sir? I can't answer. I can't look at her. I look at Vera instead. Vera's staring at me with quiet confidence, patiently awaiting for me to come up with some transcendently brilliant plan. I've never been able to convince her I'm not the genius who made her. I'm just the husk of that person left behind when he died. She's carrying my case. I've got stimulants in there. Maybe my cogitator runs through the list, and the theoretical effects. Some act on organs the cortex doesn't have anymore. Some would kill what was left. None would wake her up happy and functional. She needs a massive flood of neurotransmitters, and I just can't think of any way to make that happen. We're all falling to our deaths. I'm sobering up in the worst way, aching and terrified and confused. I swivel my head wildly, looking for help, escape. Apex is in the corner, his back to us, furiously masturbating. Vera's a silver statue of a warrior goddess, staring down at me, serene and beautiful. Mouse Girl's eyes are full of hope and fear. She's actually kinda cute, in a skinny, over-eager way, and she thinks I'm the Messiah walking. I'm about to ask if she wants to die a virgin when I get the third worst idea I've ever had. I lurch forward into the hole and stare at the wires running into the globe. I yell over my shoulder, "Hey, have you got a set of 3-gauge neural jacks in your neck?" I get 2 replies. No, sir, I haven't had the honor of augmentation. Yes, master, my neural interface jacks are 3-gauge compatible. I wince. I'm going to have to be very, very high to pull this off. I'm focused, chemically assisted and heuristically assisted. It's giving me nasty feedback in my air detection, forcing me to check and recheck every connection exactly 18 times and consistently tapping my left foot. But it's a hell of a lot better than crossing a wire and fucking this whole thing up. I've got Vera wired through the portable cogitator and my hacked data slate. She made a strange little gasping noise when I brushed her hair aside so I could jam the cable in the back of her neck, but she hasn't complained. Not that she ever does. Mouse Girl brought the blankets I asked for and laid them on the floor, and now she's scurrying around lighting all the incense and candles. I see she's disappointed in her eyes when I tell her she's not cleared to witness this particular most holy ritual of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Yes, sir. Is there anything I can do to help? Anything at all? I hesitate, then poke my head into the cortex containment cylinder and study the floating near corpse for a moment. One wire seems to be connected to the ancient pickled nipple. I peer at the system for a moment, then pull back. Yes, actually, is there a pressure sensor on deck 15, section C? Yes, sir. Go there, wait 10 minutes, and then start blowing on the sensor. Or direct a vent into it and move the airflow back and forth. Sir? Can't hurt. Might help. It warms my heart to see her jump into action like that. I turn to the problem at hand. Vera is standing at attention, wires emerging from her shining golden hair and trailing down to the ground. A memory, vivid and garish, pops into my mind unabated. A couple of guys had jumped me for money I owed them, outside a bar on Feltzworld. I'd been hammered and hadn't been able to make out anything but motion and screaming until everything stopped, and I saw Vera standing in a pool of light cast by the street lamp, shining with blood. A length of intestine carelessly draped over her shoulder and trailing down to the ground. I open my case and remove a small data card and a plunger filled with clear fluid. I talk to keep my mind off the thought of my secret, private, inner juices being used to paint the room a nice Mechanicus rust red. Vera, you understand what we're going to do here, yeah? You get what's happening? I understand, Master. I look forward to the mission's success. You're capable of success, right? The massive serotonin release we need to achieve? With your assistance, Master? Yes. Right. I'll do my best. I frown, worried. Are you going to be able to feel... how sensitive is that metallic skin of yours? Shall I remove it? Her hand reaches up to a point between her gleaming breasts. With hallucinatory clarity, my mind's eye shows me the last servitor I saw with its cowling off, red and gray and wet. I hurriedly turn away, jam the data card into the jack in the back of my head, and reach up under my robes to stick the plunger into my secondary liquid intake valve. When I turn around, the world's already beginning to fray and burn at the edges like a tapestry in a house fire. Bear is stepping towards me. Bear. Her skin beneath the shivering silver is pale and crisscrossed with fine scars. I vaguely remember making them, scalpel flying, sculpting perfection. There are silver vines growing up all the walls, and Vera's shining like a pale, breathtaking star, and my skin is on fire like there's something I really, really have to do to her. Standing now and continuing until time arcs its back, screams, and ends. Shortly thereafter, the world moves. Well, the station at least. Individual altitude jets flicker. Jets of flame brighten the void, with increasing frequency, moving in waves down the side of the 10-kilometer-long station. The waves pulse and interfere, build and cancel, until suddenly they all roar at once, blazing propellant in every direction, as inside the station, doors slam open and close, and ear-splitting alarms echo down the corridors. A few minutes later, the planetside altitude jets fire together. Gently they thrust the angular behemoth up out of the blue gas giant's gravity well and towards the stars. I'm waiting in one of the massive empty holds. I'm waiting for a shuttle. These facts sit quietly in the calm center of my brain. Around the outer edges, fatigue and specters, fear and loathing chase themselves through a fog of chemical residue. Vera is here, Apex is here, the skinny, mousy mouse girl is here. The tall, old, talking man was here, but Apex jumped on his face and screamed for a while and he left. There's a viewpoint in the bay doors. I stared out at the stars. There's something out there. Just over the edge. Just out of sight. Something subliminal. Sir? Oh, right. I was telling this girl something. Something very important. I have to tell her about the thing out there we need to find. The thing we lost. I marshal my brilliance. Strange memories on this nervous night here on Barstow. How long? 10,000 years ago? History is hard to know because of all the hired bullshit, but even without being sure of history, it seems entirely reasonable to think that every now and then the energy of a whole species comes to a head in a long, fine flash, for reasons that nobody really understands at the time, and which will never explain in retrospect what actually happened. Humanity boiled up out of our one little world, pouring madness and light in every direction, striking sparks everywhere. There was no fear, not of anything, not even of ourselves. There was a fantastic universal sense that whatever we were doing was right, that we were winning. We had our ideas and our technology, and we took the fight to the forces of old and evil, certain that our glorious energy would simply prevail. We had all the momentum. We were riding the crest of a high and beautiful wave. And now, 10,000 years later, you can stand and look out towards the halo stars, and with the right kind of eyes, you can almost see the high watermark. That place where the wave finally broke and rolled back. Everyone's quiet for a while. I told them what we lost. Vera's staring at me seriously. Apex hugs himself and rocks back and forth. Mouse Girl's eyes are sparkling. Her mouth is moving as she remembers every bad, crazy word. Sir? What? Sir, the maintenance file for the Cortex. I'm to run the input file stored in the cogitator 3 times a week at least. Yes? Right. Yes. That's right. And the ritual, sir? What blessings should I perform before running the sacred file? Or, is it anointing? Add some ethanol to her nutrient drip and tell her she's pretty. Yes, sir. One of the stars is moving. It's the shuttle. Coming closer. Mouse Girl's trying to ask something. Sir, might I know your name? Tech Priest JPL27. Thank you, sir. The shuttle docks. Mecha androids gripping the walls of the tube for balance, flanked by my beautiful failures. I stagger off the station. A voice calls from behind me. Omnissiah watch over you, JP. I'll never forget what you taught me. I look over my shoulder, squinting. My visual cortex is fried, and there's a corona of rainbow around every life source. Mouse Girl is waving. I call back, a voice crackling with static. You take care, Clara. Clara. That was her name. I remember now.
Transmission ends. We